Hi, everyone. Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to another episode of Capping the Card, where I go through every single race on Saturday's Aqueduct card and give you my top pick and my top value play. Now, before we get into all the good stuff, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to the NYRA Bets YouTube channel today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos are dropping on the channel. We have horse racing news shows now. We also have race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, racing live streams are going to be coming up. Can anyone say Turfway Park? Anyway, we're going to have a lot of fun all winter long. So you definitely want to make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. All right. Well, the premise of Capping the Card is pretty straightforward. I go through race 1 through 10 for Saturday's Aqueduct card and highlighted by the Central Park Stakes. Also have the Notebook Stakes a little bit earlier. Top pick, straightforward, value play. Can mean one of two things. Sometimes it's a horse that I think is absolutely got a real shot to win at a little bit of a bigger price, should be included in your pick fours, your pick fives, your pick sixes. Other times, it's a horse that I think is just going to really outrun their odds. Maybe not a win contender, maybe more of a horse to use in exactas, trifectas. I try to call that out when there's a disaggregation, distinction between those two. So just something to keep in mind, but we like to have a lot of fun here, like to pick some winners. So let's get into it for Saturday at Aqueduct. And we'll kick things off in a $90,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares going 6 furlongs on the turf. And for the second week in a row, I'm going to kick things off by picking a Bill Mott horse to win. Last week, Tux paid off nicely in that very first race, and hoping Montego Bay can do the same thing here for Mott and jockey Jose Gomez. This is an interesting race because it's an open company race. You have a lot of horses stepping up from state bred competition. And that's particularly the case for your morning line favorite, the number 5 long-legged Queen at 5-2. Blinkers are going on this one. It's a speed horse with Johnny Velasquez aboard. Normally, that's like catnip for me. Always like to see that. That said, this is going to be a little bit of a class test going up against open company, maiden special weight company rather than state bred company. So just something to keep in mind there. The other horse that is a shorter price is the number 3 Out Too Late for Mike Maker. Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard. You know that horse is going to take too much money because Irad's aboard, and understandably so. Irad always very formidable in these spots, but still, this is a horse that has had 5 bites at the apple now, hasn't really gotten the job done, and has kind of looked like the horse has plateaued a little bit. And, had a little bit of a promising effort back last time out with Manny Franco aboard, just didn't really run, was more one-paced. I think that's a little bit of an issue. So I'm going to, like I said, go towards the outside and Montego Bay. And this one, since Mott has brought this horse onto the turf, the first time on the turf, not great, showed some initial speed and then faded badly going 2 turns. Cuts the horse back, goes down to Ellis Park, actually, finishes 4th, but showed a little bit of effort there, showed some ability to make up ground late. And then last time out, really showed some nice effort in that race against the Maker horse Out Too Late and finished 2nd. And, recorded a 73 buyer speed figure, seems to be moving in the right direction. Gomez is aboard again here. And I just think this one presents a little bit of value. Out of those top 3 choices, I'd rather go with a horse like this that I think still has another gear potentially, is still maybe finding themselves on the surface. Remember, this is only the 3rd turf sprint now for this horse, and you saw a significant progression between first and second attempt. So I think at 7-2, you're getting a nice price there with Montego Bay. Now, I mentioned a lot of horses coming out of state bred competition. My value play is one of those, and that's Heavenly Girl at 6-1. If you're going to try to beat maybe the top 2 choices on the morning line in this race, then including a horse like Heavenly Girl in your horizontal wagers, if you're also going to be, including a horse like Montego Bay and maybe a couple of others, I think makes some sense. If you're including maybe 2 or 3 of the top choices on your card, then maybe in your ticket, I should say, then maybe Heavenly Girl is more of an underneath play. It depends on how you're playing this race a little bit. But I like this one for DePaz on the rail. Ricardo Santana Jr. up on the mount. I expect Ricardo to be aggressive from the inside rail. That's when Ricardo's at his best. Now, this horse has shown good, but maybe not elite speed in some of his races. Second back from a little bit of a layoff, though, has been training well for DePaz. And I just think this one has the opportunity to potentially continue to move forward a little bit. Has never turned in bad efforts, so to speak. Really just kind of one so-so effort, and that was coming off of a significant layoff. Otherwise, this horse has been pretty honest every time out. I think you could do a lot worse than certainly including a horse like Heavenly Girl in your exactas and tries. But on top of that, I think she's absolutely worthy of potentially a spot on your early pick 5 ticket in this race. And again, I think just maybe needs a little bit of pace, but I think Ricardo's going to be aggressive and going to have this horse maybe a little closer to the lead than she was last time out. Well, let's move to race number 2, which is a $92,000 allowance race going 6 furlongs, but this time we're going 6 on the dirt for 3-year-olds and up. And another intriguing race, because the easy thing to do would go to number 3, Key Point, for Brad Cox and Manny Franco. Now, those two, when they team up, are absolutely dynamite. They've won 32% of their races over the last year together with a really strong positive ROI. Here's the thing. I don't know if I can trust this horse. Key Point is a little bit of a money burner, has been the favorite, if I'm not mistaken, in 6 of 7 career starts, has only won 2 of those 6 times that the horse has been favored. So it just seems to be erratic. Was initially with Chad Brown, now with Cox, really fired off a huge race going back to August, which was his first start in almost 2 years, and ran a 93 buyer and looked really good, beating New York bred Optional Claiming Company. Then stepped up against Open Company Allowance and promptly finished 7th as your 3-1 favorite. Now you're going to ask me to take 9-5 on this one. That's just a little bit too tough, especially if we're staying at the same level. If we were dropping back down into state bred Optional Claiming Company, maybe so. But Open Company N1NX Allowance, I'm going to sit there and try to play against this one. I'm going to use the number 6 Toxic Gray, which is a very logical, I think, alternative in the spot. This is a horse that has very good early speed, sitting on the outside. This is a short field, only a 6-horse field. For trainer Mike Maselli, Jose Lezcano up, and I expect Jose to get this horse out and in a really good position. The nice thing about this horse is while Jose had this horse on the lead last time out, this horse's 2 victories have both come stalking the pace. So I think if for some reason, you look at a horse like Tivy for Jenna Antonucci has a little bit of speed. Even Swinging Solo, who's a last out maiden winner, has some good speed. So, Defusky Island on the inside has some good speed. Even Bonus Move, who I'll talk about in a second, has some good speed. So if Lezcano wants to just kind of track off the pace, he's going to be able to get that trip from the outside. So I think he's going to be able to set the right type of a trip at 2-1. If I'm going to have to choose between trusting one of those shorter prices, I'd rather use a horse like Toxic Gray, who I could see floating up maybe to 5-2, maybe even as high as 3-1, just because Maselli and Lezcano don't exactly strike fear into bettors the way that Cox and Franco do. So I think Key Point could take a little bit more money in this spot, and I'm willing to try to take a modest stand against that one. Another horse to consider, and it's not a huge value by any stretch. And again, this is a 6-horse field, so finding value can be a little subjective. But I do think Bonus Move as your third choice at 4-1 for Hennigan Velasquez is interesting at the very least in this spot. This horse has really good speed. Only win was on the turf, so that is something to keep in mind. It's coming back from a little bit of a layoff, but has been training well. I like seeing a lot of those 5 furlong works, especially culminating with that 5 furlong bullet on October 31st, coming back with a nice little 4 furlong maintenance, getting ready for this race. But this one's now on the dirt and has some nice races on the dirt too. It has run against some nice horses in terms of Stolen Magic, in terms of Born Noble. So has faced some decent competition. And like I said, has, making that return now to the dirt, but I think, could easily translate in terms of speed figures some of the efforts we saw on the turf back onto this track, onto the main track. So 4-1, I think that one's a little bit interesting. You could talk me into Defusky Island as more of an underneath play at 6-1. Swinging Solo, I took a long look at as maybe a 10-1 long shot. But again, that's going to be a lot stepping up from a last out maiden winner at Delaware Park and a maiden special weight 40 to now this. Tivy, again, 6-1. If Tivy is a value if you're looking for a trifecta to close out. I mean, this is a horse that is very honest. If I'm not mistaken, 15 for 20 hitting the board. So you're going to get a horse that's going to try hard. Now, the problem is 2 of those times the horse has missed the board were the last 2 times out. And the horse may be a little bit better at a starter allowance level rather than this kind of allowance open company level. So something to keep in mind here for that race. Let's move on to race number 3 on the card, which is the Notebook Stakes. And, I tried to beat the favorites in the first couple of races, really tried to look around the favorites in this spot. It was really hard to do that, though. And ultimately, I landed on Man and Finance. I should mention one thing that makes this race a little bit more complicated to handicap a few days in advance, like I do, is what to do with the Wesley Ward duo, the 2 fillies. Phoebe in Wonderland and Shoot It True. Why is this complicated? Because both of them are cross-entered in a stakes race the next day. I don't know if they're going to be going there. I don't know if they're going to be coming here. So that obviously can change the pace complexion significantly. It can change the betting complexion significantly. That's just something to keep in mind. Both of those horses are a little bit interesting. Phoebe in Wonderland maybe more so, but I think, even Shoot It True, finishing 4th in that Kentucky Juvenile to horse like West Memorial. So, both are coming back from a layoff. Usually Ward on the dirt, I'm willing to kind of try to beat a little bit more easily. But let's get and talk about the man of the hour, the Man in Finance. I don't know if he's 6'4" or 6'5" or whatever that meme is, but he is your favorite at 8-5 for Danny Gargan and Luis Rivera Jr. Won very impressively in debut, drew off and absolutely trounced the second choice in this race, Kenny B, who subsequently came back and absolutely trounced Maiden Company next time out. This one seems pretty talented. Gargan doesn't step horses up into stakes competition in their second starts too often. He's only done it 4 times over the last 5 years, actually. He's only won one of those with Dakota Gold, actually, but has finished in the money in the other or 2 of the other 3, including with Dornoch and the Sapling. If you remember, Dornoch wasn't even had not broken his maiden yet, and then went to run in the Sapling at Churchill or at Monmouth at Monmouth Park, and ran second that day to Noted, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of funny because this is the Notebook Stakes. Anyway, just doing word association now. The Man in Finance had the right sort of trip last time. He drew a little further outside, stalked the pace, pulled away. Has the rail this time. Obviously, that always presents a little bit more of a complication. There is other speed in this race for sure. In the chase, theoretically, is a horse that should show speed, although hasn't really shown it the last 2 times out. Soon to be King seems to like to come from off the pace. Certainly, the Ward duo could present some issues, but then you get to the number 6, Kenny B, on the far, and then on the far outside, 3Bs has some decent early speed as well. But, if the Ward duo aren't in this race, then I think Man in Finance can really just gun it from the rail, potentially get out there up front, just wire this field. I think this one's pretty talented. Now, if you're looking for some value in this race, I do think the number 3, Soon to Be King, for George Weaver, Eric Cancel up 9-2 in the morning line, is your third choice. Again, if the Ward pair enter this race, then there's probably more speed on the front end. And I think then you can look at a situation where a horse could really come from off the pace. And if that happens, Soon to Be King has the best late speed in the field, has shown the ability to make up ground late, has run some really nice races, almost beat Moplex 3 back in the funny side, was kind of maybe didn't like the sloppy track, although finished second in the aspirant up at Finger Lakes to Bostonian. And then last time out was just hopelessly behind early in the Sleepy Hollow, and obviously made up a lot of ground late to finish third in that race. Actually made up about 8 lengths all told from where he was at the beginning of the race. So horse has some ability for Weaver. I think is one to certainly consider. Like I said, the big X factor is what does Phoebe in Wonderland and Shoot It True do? If they enter, then a horse like Soon to Be King is upgraded, in my opinion, because that means there's more pace. If those 2 are out and they scratch, I think Man in Finance looks like a single. Well, let's move to race number 4, which is a $40,000 maiden claimer for 3-year-old and up fillies and mares going a mile all on the main track. And listen, we talk about some maiden claimers. We got to talk about Linda Rice, right? Of course we do. This is Linda season. And I think that the number 3 here looks first for Linda is pretty formidable in this particular spot. And it's interesting because your morning line favorite is the number 2 Street View at 2-1, also for Linda. But here's the thing. Jose Lezcano has been on that horse the last 2 times out. And Jose is off. And Jose is on Looks First instead. And Eric Cancel is on Street View. Why is that significant? Jose Lezcano is Linda's number 1 guy. So if Jose is off Street View and opts to go on Looks First, that tells you everything you need to know about what Jose thinks this horse has a better chance at doing in this particular spot. So Looks First is coming off of a little bit of a layoff, has been training nicely coming up to this race. I think that's probably a big part of what Jose sees. Maybe he's been on this horse in the mornings. That I don't know. But he's inevitably been around the barn in the morning for sure for Linda. And I think this one could really do well off the bench. Linda off the claim and off the layoff is usually very, very good. Again, we start turning the page to fall and winter here at Aqueduct. This is when Linda Rice usually does her winning. And so I think this one makes a lot of sense in this spot. Second time against maiden claimers. And I think you're going to see a big improvement here on the stretch out, actually going a mile. So I like Looks First at 3-1 as my top pick. And now, in terms of the value play, I'll go with the horse that's taking the class drop and getting a little bit of a makeover package. And that's in All My Dreams at 6-1 for Anthony Dutrow with Kendrick Carmouche aboard. Always like Kendrick. And this one's getting the blinkers off, which is an interesting move. I don't play blinkers off as an angle very often, but I do think it's interesting because this horse hasn't necessarily shown much speed, but they're moving blinkers off, which maybe indicates that they think this horse just gets a little too agitated before a race and maybe just needs to kind of get into the feel of the race a little bit more. I love the outside post position actually for that specific purpose with Kendrick aboard. Kendrick's going to be aggressive. They're going to try to get this horse as forward as possible, but I think this horse was probably going to be sitting towards the back of the field. It's a short field, though, and most importantly, the horse is making the big class drop. Horse is going from maiden special weight down to maiden claiming company. Yes, we're going to state breds, but now we're going against open company maiden claimers. Nevertheless, I think that's a pretty big class drop, no matter if you're coming out of state bred competition or not. So in All My Dreams, 6-1, Kendrick's up, blinkers are off, outside post position draw, a lot of things to like there. And there isn't a lot of speed in this race. That's why I actually like Looks First quite a bit, because I think Looks First might have the best speed in this race. I think Jose just goes straight to the front and doesn't look back. And in that case, I actually think in All My Dreams might be sitting more mid-pack rather than sitting all the way in the back. So if that's the case, then in All My Dreams, I think it's a real shot to certainly hit the board and maybe upset things if things go right in this race. But at 6-1, I think presents a little bit of value. Let's go to race number 5 on the card, which is a $50,000 optional claimer for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares going a mile on the main track. And a couple of interesting horses in this race. Obviously, people are going to key in on your 2 favorites, which is Save Us Melania for Linda with Jose Lezcano up, and the number 5 Sedona for Shug McGahee and Flavian Pratt. I don't have either of those horses as my top choice. Save Us Melania admittedly looks like a completely different horse now that she is in Linda's barn after starting with Danny Gargan and then with Safi and then now with Linda. Last 2 wins have been great. $20,000 maiden claimer and a $50,000 starter allowance. This is a little bit tougher company. Was on a speed favoring track last time out and was able to just take him gate to wire and draw away. 2 back was just thoroughly the class of that field. And so willing again to try to beat this horse from the inside rail at a short price at 9-5 too, especially coming out of the chute. Then you look at Shug's horse. Listen, I love Shug, but and Flavian's up on the mount, which always makes it dangerous. But at some point, Sedona, I just don't know what we're going to do with this horse. In that this is a horse that's a deep closer and on a track that really usually doesn't support that too well. And I just have a hard time seeing a lot of pace breaking out in this race. I think that from a pace standpoint, it's just up against it. Now, it might have the class, but again, this is a horse that has, burned some money sometimes and usually is a pretty short price. I mean, the last 3 times out, this horse was 1-2, 8-5, and 7-5. and finished second, third, and third. So it's tough for me to take 2-1 on a horse like that and feel confident about it. As a result, I think Bells Beach for Chad Brown with Irad Ortiz Jr. up, a name we've not mentioned yet, is really appealing. And this is a horse, admittedly, one is just a maiden winner and is now stepping up, coming off of a little bit of a layoff, having last run in the Wilton against Miss Justify and Striker Has Dial, where the horse was the favorite, even money favorite, mind you, and really collapsed pretty poorly in terms of just, really fatiguing down the stretch, finished fifth in that race. But now comes back, gets Lasix back, which might have been an issue, and keeps Irad up. To me, that's significant that we keep Irad up because Irad is jumping off the number 2 Weigh the Risks for Chad. Dylan Davis is taking that one, and Irad is up here for Chad in the 6-horse race. So listen, in a 6-horse field, if I can get past the top 2 choices, even if I land on a horse like Bells Beach at 3-1, which isn't huge value, I'll take it. I think 1 turn mile is a good setup for this horse. Horse 101 turn mile at Churchill Downs, and coming from a little off the pace from the far outside post. I think this one, it could be interesting because, again, I don't think there's a ton of speed in this race. And certainly, I think Savas Melania probably is that speed, but willing to try to see if maybe a horse like Weigh the Risk really sends as well to try to maybe put some pressure, maybe a little Chad Brown teamwork there between those 2 entries. In terms of value play, I'll go to the number 4 I'm Buzzy for Gustavo Rodriguez with Manny Franco aboard. This one's got decent early speed, usually considered more of a mid-pack trip. I think that might be useful in this spot. Very honest horse in terms of being 15 for 39 in the exacta lifetime, 22 for 39 in the money lifetime, and, ran second last time out at this level, at this distance. So I just think this is a horse that you're super consistent horse, more of a horse I would probably use from a vertical standpoint. Horse hasn't really won since early this year, back in February, and that was against claiming competition. So this might be a little tougher than what this horse wants to do, but I think has shown that the horse can acquit itself well. And like I said, maybe sit a little bit more of a mid-pack trip in a race that doesn't have a ton of speed. Maybe this horse sits a little bit closer to the pace than he normally does and is able, or she is able to get the job done here at a little bit of a price. Let's head to the back half of the card, and let's go to race number 6, which is an $80,000 allowance for 3-year-old and up New York breds going a mile and a 16th on the turf. And going to go with a little bit of a price for this one. And I'm going to take a shot with Fake Celebrity, 8-1. I got to give a shout out to my colleague, Kaylee Shapiro. She really put me on this horse a little bit and kind of mentioned, she kind of, we were talking about these races the other day before the morning lines were out or anything like that. And she goes, that Fake Celebrity is an interesting horse. And I thought, I need to maybe take a closer look at this one. And the more I looked at it, the more I thought, this is an interesting horse. Blinkers are coming on for Chad Brown. Dylan Davis stays up on the mount. And, Chad brought this one back from an 11-month layoff last time out at this level. Horse finished 5th. Didn't really make up a ton of ground, but did pass some horses late in order to get 5th. I'd imagine second back we're going to be even better. First time blinkers on are always plus moves for Brown in general. I think this gets this horse to show maybe a little bit more speed. Dylan has been having just such a phenomenal year overall. So I expect this horse to get a really good ride. 8-1, you're getting good value. I'm going to try to beat a couple of other horses in this race, particularly a horse like the number 3 Slap in the Face. There's a horse that we'll talk about a little bit later coming up. This is a 1 for 9 with 5 seconds. And it's not like all those seconds were in the maiden company. The horse broke its maiden after 5 starts, but the last 3 times, second by 3/4, second by a half, second by a length and a half. It's hard to trust those horses at short prices when they just keep getting seconds, even when they're running well against this level. So again, a little bit of a tough horse for me to trust. And just one of the other reasons I decided to go toward a horse like Fake Celebrity. Now, I do think Chad's other horse, Amplitude, at 3-1 with Flavian Proud aboard makes a ton of sense. Obviously, that horse is getting off the inside rail from last time out, which was a maiden victory, and lost in debut, but that was an off track. It was a wet track. It was an off-turf day, and the horse still almost won that race. Came back, won easily, has a really nice turn of foot. So Amplitude at 3-1, I think makes a ton of sense as a last out maiden winner here. But again, I'm going to try to go with a little bit of a price. In terms of my top pick, am I going to include Amplitude in my late pick 5? Absolutely, I am. Probably will not include Slap in the Face, though, at 2-1. Try to get past a couple of smaller and lesser choices here. Now, in terms of a horse that I'm looking at more underneath and looking to use in more of a trifecta is the number 5 Miracle Mike at 10-1 for Tom Morley. Eric Cancel up on the mount. This one runs pretty honest usually. 9 for 16 hitting the board in his career. 6 third-place finishes, including three of the last 4 times out. So this is a horse that just kind of runs up into things a lot of times or fades into things. I mean, he's got a little bit of a varied running style, but really the only time this horse didn't run well the last 4 times out, really the last 5 times out on the turf, was the one time the horse blew the brake. And the other time the horse didn't run well was in muddy sealed track in an off-turf race. So this horse has been in good form for Morley since coming over from Todd Pletcher's barn. Like I said, I think this one has good tactical speed, can sit a couple of different types of trips to potentially win, has one from off the pace, but can be right up on the lead if that opportunity presents itself. So, like I said, I think this one at 10-1 presents some value in a few different ways. Well, let's go to what everybody is probably going to have as the single on their late pick 5 sequence, and that is the number 3 Valenzuela, 4-5 for trainer Linda Rice with Dylan Davis up. Listen, it's easy to overthink things sometimes in racing, and when you're confronted with a 4-5 favorite, you do one of two things. You either try to beat that favorite and you try to find some alternatives to that favorite, and then you build your ticket around omitting that favorite, or you lean into it and you go, this is my single, and you move on. It's hard to really poke holes in Valentine's Day, and that's a funny thing to say, obviously, in a claiming $10,000 race. So when you're talking about, a $10,000 claimer for 3-year-olds and up, a sure thing is hardly a sure thing. But this one just has a lot of ability coming over for Linda at this level and has run some really nice races the last few times. I mean, this is a winner of 4 straight. Now, you might say, Matthew, this is the time to beat the horse. I actually think last time out was the time to beat the horse. It was running a claiming 12-5 off the bench. I think that's when you wanted to beat the horse, and the horse still managed to win. So, 1 1/8 checks that box, has won at that level and won convincingly at that level, and is 5 for 9 winning at Aqueduct, so likes the track, 9 for 19 winning in his career. So, again, Linda has this horse in good form. This horse has great early speed. I expect this horse just to go straight to the lead and lope along exactly the way Dylan did last time out. I don't think the 1.5 1 1/8 is going to be an issue at all. 4-5, you swallow a short price, but again, you do it strategically with your pick 5. You single in the spot and you move on. Now, if there's a big price that I'm at least a little bit interested in, it is Steady Progress. And this is a horse that, listen, has a win at the distance, going 1 1/8, broke its maiden actually going 1 1/8, has finished 3rd at this distance before as well, is 8 for 12 in the money at Aqueduct, is 4 for 4 in the money this year. 3 of those have come against claiming competition. This horse is taking a little bit of a class drop in terms of last running, claiming 25 N2L, and is coming off of a little bit of a layoff, having not run since February. Listen, this horse took forever to break its maiden. The horse will need to get faster. All of these things go without saying. I am not trying to beat Valentine's Day with Steady Progress. I am trying to look for a way to make a little bit of money potentially in an exacta or trifecta, because the easy exacta is just to play the 3-8 straight. The 8 being Cumberland Blues, Wayne Potts' horse, a very logical second choice. Okay. But if you're looking beyond that, it gets pretty murky pretty quickly. And I think Steady Progress at 15-1, it's a big price, but I could see this horse running a lot better than 15-1 in terms of where it's placed. Now, could finish 10 lengths back and finish 3rd. I could see that happening for sure. But I think the Oklahoma bred is worth a shot here at 15-1. And I think it's, like I said, in these types of races, the board can get a little bit of wonky, and you might be able to make a little bit of money on a couple of crazy exacta bets in this particular spot. Well, let's move to race number 8 on the card, and that is a maiden special weight, 75,000 for your New York bred filly and mares that are 3-year-olds and up, going a mile and 16th on the turf. And I mentioned beating a certain type of horse earlier when I was referring to the horse that was 1 for 9 with 5 second place finishes. Here, I'm going to try to beat your favorite number 1, Autumn. Autumn is 0 for 11. Autumn is 6 for 11 in the money. I just can't. I can't keep betting this horse. I can't use this horse at this price. And if the horse beats me, the horse beats me. And that's just kind of how I feel about it in general. And so I'm willing to try to beat this horse who's 2-1 on your morning line. Also willing to try to get around the number 5 Starlight Dancer at 4-1 for Michelle Nevin. So if I'm looking to get around those two, then suddenly the board opens up a little bit. I think the next two choices are both really interesting. Just one more, 9-2 for trainer Horacio de Paz. The blinkers are coming off for this one. Admittedly, yeah, the horse didn't run great in debut back in April, but went to the bench for a while. De Paz has been working this one out for a little while, for the last month or so. And I think this one, coming out of a really nice race. That's the other thing, is that debut race, the winner of it was Grayosh, who, of course, if you remember, Grayosh is now your Lake Placid winner, grade 2. Chantilly Road won next time out and then ran in the Wild Appleseed. Then you look at a horse like Wish List, who dropped down in class but won next time out as well. There were some nice horses in that race. And I just think that this is one, 9-2, blinkers off. Horacio's been getting this one ready. Ricardo's up. I expect this horse to show maybe a little bit more speed with Ricardo on the mount. Training nicely, willing to take a little bit of a shot with this one. The other one that I'm willing to take a shot with, honestly, is Danny's horse. Danny Gargan's horse, a little bit naughty with Junior Alvarado up. The horse is maybe a little one-paced and likes to kind of come from the back. I mean, the last time out, that was a little concerning that the horse just kind of flattened out, because normally the horse early in his career, or early in her career, I should say, showed some nice turn of foot and at least made up some ground late. Came back this year and hasn't really shown that. Has, passed some horses late in one of the races, largely was one pace last time out, but it's 6-1 against this field. I just think, again, Junior's up now. I think this one could be interesting at 6-1. I like the pedigree. Obviously, Oscar Performance up top. You always like that on the turf. But this is one that I think can sit more of a mid-pack trip and maybe not have quite as much work to do coming for home. I think that's important because I don't think there's a lot of pace in this race. Stop me if you've heard that before in a New York turf race. But I do think a horse like the number 5 Starlight Dancer could try to wire the field in some ways. The thing is, that horse is stepping up from Maiden Claiming Company and is now facing maiden special weight. Now, admittedly, this is not the strongest field, so maybe you can get around it. But I think that's one that, like I said, I think Danny's horse, a little bit naughty, is one to consider. Now, if you're looking for a bigger price than 6-1, I think Christophe Clement's horse, if this horse hadn't drawn in the 10 hole, Detonate, I would have liked this horse more. The horse drawing the far outside, going 2 turns, is always tricky, but that horse is 10-1. So the number 10 for Clement, Denate, that one, I think, like I said, is also stepping up, much like Michelle Nevins from last out Maiden Claiming Company, and is coming off of a little bit of a layoff. Christophe doesn't place these horses in these spots just for, their health. I mean, it feels like he's getting this one ready for something. This one could be sitting on a nice race, but that far outside post makes it a little bit tough. Well, let's head to the feature race of the day, which is the Central Park Stakes. And we're going a mile on the turf here. And I really kind of flipped a coin between my top pick, my top value play in terms of who I was going to pick as my top selection. Because on a certain level, I want to zig. And I want to go with Smooth Breeze, who I'm going to talk about in a second. But the more and more I think about this race, the more difficult it is to get around the number 9 early adopter. There are only 2 horses in this field coming out of graded stakes races last time out, and these are those 2 horses. They finished 3rd and 4th, respectively, with early adopter having significant trouble in the lane. The horse was checked badly. Momentum completely stopped and was still managed to re-rally past several horses to get up for third behind Zulu Kingdom and Noble Confessor. Those two go on to run in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. And granted, didn't run particularly well, but they both ran in that race. So, grade one entrants, both of them. Early Adopter now gets Pratt up on the mount and takes over for Manny Franco. And I don't think Manny didn't do anything wrong. It was just in the wrong spot at the wrong time. I don't think it was his doing by any stretch. I'm not trying to insinuate that. But still, Pratt is up on the mount here for Chad Brown. This one has an opportunity to really take a step forward. It looked like this horse was about to really unfurl in that Pilgrim last time out, over yielding turf course as well. That's another thing we should mention. Might not have liked that turf setup quite as much. Now we're going to be getting a firm turf course where this horse broke its debut up at Saratoga in terms of being over firm ground that day. It's only 3-1. The far outside post is a little bit of an issue, but the horse has some tactical speed to be able to save some ground and get over. So I think it's definitely a worthy favorite, even if it's a tepid favorite at 3-1. Now, the Smooth Breeze finished just a head behind Early Adopter in that race. Now, some of the complications that Early Adopter had were because of Smooth Breeze, but this is one that broke its maiden debut at Saratoga against Statebred Company and then stepped up to run fourth in that Pilgrim. And again, did it over that yielding turf course, might appreciate getting back on the firmer ground, still managed to move forward from a buyer speed figure perspective in that effort of 66. Would need to take another step forward here. But at 8-1, I think this horse for Jorge Abreu and Dylan Davis provide outstanding opportunities for value. So I do like Smooth Breeze quite a bit in this race. If you're looking for some other potential value, maybe George Weaver's Not for Hire at 6-1 is a horse that's coming out. Again, last out maiden winner, debut maiden winner, going 6 furlongs, and really was drawing away from the field. Again, Statebred Company. So not only were we stepping up against Open Company, we're stepping up against Stakes Open Company and winners for the first time. So there's some questions to answer there. Jack and Jim for Graham Motion, I think another one stepping up from Statebred debut maiden's win. So again, some things to consider, but this one at least did it going 2 turns already. So we know this one can handle the distance. Horacio's horse sounds like a plan, wired the field last time out. I don't think that horse is going to get that trip this time, which is maybe why I'm a little less bullish on that one. I usually like Horacio's horses. Ricardo's going to send with that one, but there's a little bit more speed, it feels like, in this spot. And I just think if you're looking for an alternative maybe to Early Adopter, I think Smooth Breeze, and I think Graham's horse, Jack and Jim, the number 4 at 9-2. I think those two really make a lot of sense as alternatives in that spot. Well, let's head to the final race on the card, which is a $45,000 or $75,000 maiden special weight for 2-year-old New York bred fillies, going 6 furlongs. We're on the dirt, and we're going to the far outside. We're going to Spool. And normally, I've talked about this before. If you've watched my other videos, always a little concerned about picking horses on the far outside who are 2 years old. Why? Because horses break towards open and they run toward open space. And when you're breaking on the far outside, they tend to break out into their right because there's nobody out there, obviously. You always worry about that a little bit. That said, I still really like what Spool brings to the table. Graham Motion, when he's firing off bullets with a maiden, is something worth noting. And yeah, I know it's at Fair Hills, and I know there's not a lot of other horses training there, and it's first of 8 or first of 12, but that is still significant to me to see Graham training this horse pretty forwardly. Manny Franco up on the mount. Those two have a positive ROI over the last year, winning 24% of their races. And oh, by the way, the dam of Spool, Forever Smart, has produced 4 first out winners. You don't do that by accident. Okay. So 4 first out winners, hard spun, a decent first out influence, 9%, not spectacular, but for a New York bred, actually pretty solid in that particular spot. I think at 9-2, you're getting a little bit of value. Like that one a lot. Tierra Masu, the works are not going to look amazing. So that's something to mention here. Whenever you're looking at horses trained by Jorge Duarte Jr., he has a private training facility. And those horses are working out against 1, 2, or 3 other horses, and they work slow. It's just the way it is. And you learn, the more you handicap those races, the more you know how to handicap Duarte horses. That said, this one has outstanding first out pedigree. The damn Fastener has produced 2 first out winners from the only 2 raced fulls. So 2 for 2. And this one produces some nice runners. And again, I say nice, they're not running at the highest levels, but they win. She's produced a lot of winners. And that's something that's good to see. And it's great to see that she's produced 2 first out winners from her only other 2 foals. So now we have Name Changer, who is not much of a proven sire at all here, but has gotten paired up with a very proven commodity in terms of a broodmare. So I think Miss Tierra Masu for Jorge Duarte Jr., Dylan Davis up on the mount, 5-1. I think that one presents a little bit of value, and I think could be a little interesting in this particular spot, but willing to try to get around a couple of other horses in this race, particularly the number 2 Blue-Eyed Scout, who's 3-1. And even George Weaver's horse, Truly Magic, was entered in a maiden claimer last week and is now coming back in this spot a little bit tougher. Maybe Weaver saw something, wants this one to maybe running up against a little bit tougher. Flavian Pratt is up on the mount, but I'm a little worried about this one. And I just think maybe at 4-1, we can get around this one. So I'm going with Spool, and I'm going with Miss Tierra Masu as my top 2 selections and my top pick and value play. All right, folks. Well, I appreciate everybody tuning into this episode of Capping the Card, where we go through all 10 races on Aqueduct Saturday card. Let me know in the comments below, who are your best bets? Who are your value plays for the day? Where are you looking for some of these big prices throughout the day? How are you playing the Pick 5? Would love to hear your feedback and more. Wishing all of you the very best at the track. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.